Welcome to Nourish MD, Doctor Dietitian Dialogues, where doctors and dietitians empower you about your health and discuss and provide a better path to health and wellness. Proudly presented by Concierge Medical Practice Private Physicians Medical Associates, PPMA, with your hosts, Registered Dietitians and Nutritionist, Lauren Papanos and Romana Brennan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nourish MD, Dr. Dietitian Dialogues. My name is Romana. I'm joined by our other co-host, Lauren. Today, we were talking all about tips for navigating holiday eating. So as we are approaching Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, all the other holidays that are celebrated during this very special time, there are a lot more social events and, more opportunities for potentially overeating, maybe also increased stress toward the end of the year. So again, just a lot going on, and we wanted to provide you all with 4 tips for navigating this holiday season. So myself and Lauren, we are also celebrating plenty of these different holidays. So we're right there with you when it comes to navigating these different events. So first tip number 1 is to really ensure that you're having balanced meals leading up to your holiday meals. It can be very tempting that we want to save up our calories, so to speak. And if we're having a holiday dinner, maybe skip breakfast, skip lunch, so we can go all out during dinner time. But we really want to avoid doing that. We want to ensure that those meals prior are really blood sugar balanced so that we're not going into our meal starving. In addition to that, we want to make sure that we're combating any opportunity for overeating. You're already going to be probably surrounded by a lot of those favorite foods that only come around once a year. So it can be very tempting, especially if we're going in feeling ravenous, to just eat all of the foods and to feel somewhat of a lack of feeling of control. And if we can prime our blood sugar response by ensuring that those meals beforehand are balanced, we're just going to be setting ourselves up much better also to enjoy the way that we're feeling following that meal. So Lauren, let's dive right into a little bit more specifics of how do we create those balanced meals? What do we want those meals to actually look like?
So we know from the research that by having a breakfast or your first meal of the day that is really well balanced to support an optimal blood sugar response. So what we mean by that is that there's lots of fiber. So we're talking non-starchy vegetables, maybe some antioxidant-rich fruits like berries and such, in addition to adequate protein and good healthy fats. An example of that might be you do an omelet that has a bunch of veggies in it and you have some blueberries on the side. That would be a very balanced meal. But the research shows that by having a meal like that at breakfast time, it actually improves your blood sugar control at later meals. So if you think about if you're having a holiday meal at 7 p.m. that is loaded in lots of sweet candied sweet potatoes and alcohol and whatever you name it, that's going to cause probably a blood sugar spike that, our body's going to have a hard time metabolizing the amount of those carbohydrates and that sugar from that meal. By having that well-balanced meal at breakfast time, we actually can help support our body to better metabolize that dinner. So we want to make sure that that first meal of the day is really well balanced. We also want to look at is those holiday meals being well balanced, because not only is that going to help with the metabolism of that meal, but it's also going to reduce overeating, like you mentioned. When we have an adequate balance of protein and fiber and fats and things, it helps to be able to hit all of our hunger hormones that help tell our brain that we're satiated and that we can stop eating and we got enough. And that's going in itself to help you prevent overeating and also keep you full longer. I don't know if you've ever noticed this before, but if you have a really big carb heavy meal, you might feel really full for an hour or 2 hours, but then you all of a sudden feel really hungry again. And that's because of that blood sugar dysregulation that occurs. And so, we want to make sure that if we're having this really big meal, that it's also satiating us for at least 4 or 5 hours, which is the optimal amount of time that a meal should satiate us before we then eat again. It's going to set you up for success later in the day and the following days as well with your eating. So an example of this for, say, a Thanksgiving type meal at brunch time, maybe you are doing a egg-based dish. There's also some ham, there's some bacon, there's some pancakes or waffles, there's some fruit, and there's some pastries. An example of what a balanced plate with all those ingredients would be is focusing on the eggs as your protein source. Maybe you have a slice of bacon or some ham alongside of that, as long as the ham isn't candied. And then if there's vegetables that you can throw into the eggs, even better. That's going to give you some fiber. If not, maybe you try to source through the fruits and try to find ones that have a little bit more fiber. And that would mean that you're looking for things that either have seeds in it or you're looking for something that has quite a bit of skin on it. So we're talking things like berries, your stone fruits like peaches and nectarines, kiwis would all be more fiber-rich fruit options that you could do in place of the vegetables if that's not an option. And then if you want to also do something more carb heavy like the pastries or the pancakes or waffles, then I would stick to the rule of 1 palm of your hand as the portion size for all of those food items. So if you look at the palm of your hand, we're talking from your wrist all the way up to where it meets your ring line. And you're also going to turn that sideways and look at the thickness of it. And that's about the size of what that carbohydrate dose should be. And that should encompass all of those different carb heavy options. So the pastries, the waffles, pancakes, hash browns, whatever it is that are your carb options for that meal. So either pick one of those that's going to fit that portion size, or maybe you pick a couple bites of each of them, but all collectively they fit that portion size. And we're having them alongside of the eggs with the bacon and the veggies or the fiber-rich fruits. Another tip for that you can also do is try to eat the eggs first. That's going to help stabilize your blood sugar better. It's also going to help tell your brain you're satiated quicker. So rather than having the pastry or the pancakes as the first bite of food that you take, try to have the eggs with the veggies as the first bite of food that you take and finish that first. And then once you're finished with the eggs and the veggies, then move on to those more carb heavy options like the hash browns, pancakes, and potatoes. Romana, why don't you tell us an example of maybe what this could look like with some lunch or say dinner type options at a holiday meal?
And another thing quickly before we move on to lunch and dinner, something else to account for in brunch or breakfast, whatever that earlier meal might look like, is also the beverages that you're consuming. So are you having a mimosa, some other type of fruit juice or smoothie? We want to make sure that we're accounting for those potential sugars or carbohydrates in that portion. So another thing to be mindful of when it comes to not overdoing it with the carb sources or making sure that you're having that protein first, as opposed to having 8 ounces of juice first and then moving on to your meal. We just want to make sure that we're having that with/after those protein sources as opposed to beforehand. But yes, so with lunch or dinner, we can think about it in terms of some of those more common Thanksgiving foods. For example, maybe you have turkey, again, ham, maybe some other protein in addition to maybe it's a cream spinach or some other type of vegetable. Maybe it's a hearty salad. Maybe you have those sweet potatoes or yams, whatever that other carbohydrate source is, in addition to rolls, cranberry sauce, maybe some other sauces, green beans. There's all the typical as well as the not as traditional Thanksgiving foods. But we want to consider that similar meal composition. With those lunches and dinners, it's going to be easier in general to get that vegetable portion. Ideally, when we're thinking about building our plate, can we start with that produce? Can we start with that vegetable, the non-starchy vegetables, that is, building out 50% or just about half of our plate with those non-starchy vegetables? Maybe that is green beans. Salad would be in that category as well. Any other vegetables that you guys like for Thanksgiving, Lauren?
We always do it cruciferous, so broccoli, cauliflower, like that.
That's great. Build that out and have that be part of that half of your plate. And then moving on to that other half of your plate, that's where we're going to have our proteins, our starches, added fat sources if you're not having that fat component with that protein. So if a quarter of our plate is protein, whether that is salmon, chicken, turkey, steak, if it's a plant-based protein, it's going to look a little bit different. It'll overlap in between that protein and starch component. So we just want to be mindful of that. With our non-lean animal proteins, those are going to contain that fat component. So we might not always need an additional fat with those lunches or dinners. Just as much as we don't want to overdo it on carbohydrates, we also don't need to overdo it on fats. So if you're having dark meat turkey, a normal cut of beef, that's also going to contain good fats. If you're having eggs for that brunch, you're going to be getting some good healthy fats from the eggs. So again, we don't always need to add that additional fat component. We might get some of those fats inherently in our protein sources. But again, that's about a quarter of our plate being that protein, and that similar carbohydrate portion, kind of the palm of your hand, about a cup or so for the carbohydrate component. So that's what that meal might look like. And then again, any of those additions, whether it's cranberry sauces, gravies, things of that sort, are going to be additional carbohydrate and or fat component usually. So we just want to keep that in mind.
Those are such great tips and really just great ways to be able to make sure that, like we said, you are continuing to keep your metabolism and digestion supported throughout these days where you are having heavier meals. There's also some supplements that you could look at utilizing to be able to maximize this as well. So if you are planning on ingesting alcohol, if that's something that's common for your holiday extravaganzas, then there's some good research that taking N-acetylcysteine, or NAC as you might know it, prior to alcohol ingestion or with alcohol ingestion can actually help mitigate some of the liver toxicity effects that alcohol has on the body. And so you could take N-acetylcysteine as a capsule, about 600 milligrams is what we recommend prior to starting to consume alcohol. This animal study in particular that researched this found that when NAC was consumed prior to alcohol or ethanol intake, there was decreased oxidative stress, so basically decreased inflammation on the liver, and that the NAC provided a hepatic protective effect, which means that it protected the liver as well from the damage of the ethanol. So that can be a really great option to do. We don't recommend taking it after because it actually can have the reverse effect if taken after alcohol consumption. So it needs to be before you start drinking. In terms of timing, I would say, 30 to 60 minutes is probably the most ideal. B vitamins and zinc can also be really helpful. These are nutrients that are depleted from alcohol intake. In particular, B vitamins like B1 or thiamine, B12, which we recommend in the methylcobalamin form as opposed to cyanocobalamin form. Folate, which we recommend as methylfolate, not folic acid. And zinc, which we recommend as zinc picolinate. Those are just the forms that you're looking for on the supplement label. These are all nutrients that are depleted from alcohol intake. And these nutrients are really important for metabolism and energy production, particularly those B vitamins. Also, zinc, for example, is really important for your immune function and for your skin and for healing processes in the body. So, of course, if you're just having a little bit every once in a while, you might not have to worry about this, but if it's a couple of holiday events, it might be good for you to supplement with these B vitamins and zinc during this time of year. It's also generally when it's cold and flu season, and zinc is really important for helping support your immune system. So it may be something to use in the short term for the couple of months, maybe November and December, until you get the holidays behind you. And then finally, water and electrolytes are really important. I mean, not only are they going to keep your cells hydrated and make sure that you also don't overeat, because if we are dehydrated, we have a higher propensity to do so, but we also lose water and electrolytes when we consume alcohol. It's one of the reasons why when you drink alcohol, you go to the bathroom a lot, because there is not the adequate production of antidiuretic hormone. The antidiuretic hormone is impacted, which makes you have to go to the bathroom quite a bit. So we want to make sure that we are not only drinking enough water when we're consuming alcohol, but also definitely after consumption. And then we're also looking at replacing those electrolytes that are lost during alcohol intake as well. And so you can do this with just a very simple at-home mix of utilizing some unrefined salt like Celtic salt or Redmond's real salt, maybe mixing that with a little bit of coconut water or cream of tartar for some calcium. Or if you have some electrolyte brand options that you like, Pure Hydration's a really good one. Redmond's makes a pre-made one. Those can be options that you can consume prior to drinking alcohol, as well as potentially afterwards.
Hi, my name is Lauren Papanos. I'm one of the registered dietitians here at PPMA. And as a PPMA patient, you might have heard us rave about the benefits of using FullScript before. FullScript is our online supplement dispensary. That means that you can access our library of hundreds and thousands of different professional grade supplements that can be delivered to your doorstep. Every supplement at the clinical and therapeutic dosages of what's been shown in research to support various different health benefits, as well as the highest quality. All of the supplements that are provided through FullScript have been third-party tested for accuracy within the label. And they also use quality assurance to ensure that it is stored at the proper temperature and delivered to your doorstep at the proper temperature as well, which is really important because a lot of companies aren't taking all of these measures. FullScript also provides us as your practitioner the ability to keep track of everything that you're currently taking, the amounts, the frequency, so that we have more context when you come in for a new appointment to understand any health modifications that we may recommend. Plus, the best benefit about FullScript is you get 15% off on every order, plus you get 2 to 4 day shipping. Now, if you have any questions, please never hesitate to reach out and ask us. Or if you're looking for a customized recommendation, you can schedule a nutrition consultation with our registered dietitian, Romana, who would be happy to review your testing results, gather more information about your nutrition and lifestyle to provide you a customized recommendation suited for your goals.
In addition to consuming alcohol, there's probably going to be higher intake of sugar as well. So Ro, why don't you tell us some supplemental things that we can do to be able to help with that sugar intake?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this can differ whether you are someone who has a propensity toward higher blood sugar levels or more acute increased blood sugar responses. Using something like apple cider vinegar to help blunt those short-term effects can be really helpful. 20 to 30 minutes or so before your meals, incorporating about 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. One that does also contain the mother is also going to be really impactful, but about 2 tablespoons and 3 to 4 ounces of water. You want to be sure to dilute it just so you're not damaging any kind of esophageal tissue and impacting your digestive system in that way. But implementing apple cider vinegar and the acetic acid that's contained within apple cider vinegar can have really impactful effects, not only for helping with digestive enzyme production, but also impacting your hormones downstream to upregulate that insulin production and to really support the mobilization of the glucose, which comes from those carbohydrates that you're consuming. So it really helps sensitize those receptors and make sure that your insulin is more effectively able to move glucose or blood sugar from your blood to your muscle and liver tissues, which that transportation is really important to make sure that our blood sugar levels in our blood don't stay elevated. So in that way, it helps blunt this more acute or short-term blood sugar response. So implementing apple cider vinegar, you can do so before each of your meals. You can do so before, especially those meals that you know are going to be slightly more carbohydrate heavy, but that can be a really great way to support those levels. Additionally, if you are someone who is prone to slightly more chronic elevated blood sugar levels and you're not already taking a medication that's going to impact that, utilizing a supplement like berberine can be really helpful. This is something, because it's more helpful for chronic blood sugar dysregulation, can't just use it once for one day and expect it to have that much of an impact, but it is something that, you will need to implement weeks/months ahead of time, something that can be utilized for a few months at a time, if not longer term. Definitely consult your physician or dietitian if that would be an appropriate strategy for you. Something like apple cider vinegar isn't necessarily going to drop you into low blood sugar or hypoglycemic events, but utilizing something like berberine, if the timing is off, if it's maybe not appropriate for you, can have some hypoglycemic risks. So just dropping your blood sugar a little bit too low, you might notice a little bit of shakiness or lightheadedness if you are taking it either too soon before your meal or taking it at an inappropriate time, or if it's maybe just not the right fit for you. But let's move on to some of our other tips. We want to talk through movement as well. Of course, holidays can also result in routines being slightly ajar. Maybe you're not exercising quite as much, but implementing resistance training, ensuring that if you are able to do resistance training, maybe you're traveling and you don't have access to a gym, but you can implement body weight exercises or travel with resistance bands, something that's not going to necessarily require too much equipment or too much burden in terms of having to find a gym. But resistance training is really one of the best ways that we can mobilize that glucose and utilize our muscles to help improve insulin sensitivity. So our muscles are our primary tissue where glucose is disposed of. So anywhere between 70 and 80% of that glucose is actually utilized by the muscle. So if we can use those muscles and use the glucose that is stored within those muscles, we're just making it that much easier for our body to help regulate our blood sugar. And we know that insulin sensitivity improves around that time of exercise. So for example, if we can get a resistance workout in the afternoon prior to a larger dinner, for example, that's only going to improve insulin sensitivity later on in the day. Lauren, what's one of your other favorite strategies for incorporating movement to help with insulin sensitivity?
Yeah. So, just walking or simple movement after you eat a meal, making sure you're not just sitting there becoming a couch potato after you've eaten a heavy meal. I know that can be challenging if you're feeling pretty full, but just get up and move, maybe go on a walk with the family for 15 minutes, do some dishes, clean up the house, walk around, do some things, get your muscles mobilizing. That's going to help mobilize that blood sugar and help drop that blood sugar faster. And that's going to help reduce that fatigue that you often will feel after you eat a really heavy meal. It's going to help you feel less full so that you can get digestion going quicker. And it's likely going to help prevent that hunger response that can happen an hour after having a really heavy meal, like I mentioned, because your body goes hyperglycemic and then you reactively go hypoglycemic. So just simple movement, but walking is one of the best ways to do that. In addition, it can also be helpful to look at utilizing our fourth tip, which is something like fasting after these meals. If you're able to, depending on the timing of when you're having your holiday meal, then you can stop eating right after the holiday meal. So I don't recommend doing that if your holiday meal is at 12 necessarily. But say that you're having a holiday meal at say 4 or 5, then you could finish your eating for the day and essentially just fast until breakfast the next day. And that might be a fast of say 16 hours or so, which for most people is a very tolerable amount. If you've never fasted before, that might feel very challenging for you. And so I would definitely listen to your body. If you're feeling shaky, feeling lightheaded, definitely eat and break that. But you can always practice with these things prior so that your body becomes more comfortable with burning fat as energy when you're not having a meal. But this essentially just allows your digestive system more time to be able to rest and recover, especially after you've had a really heavy meal. And that can be one potential benefit so that you're not creating any digestive inflammation the following day or days after these meals. It also gives your body more time to be able to reduce liver glycogen. So when we are fasting and we're not eating, our body, after it burns through all the glucose that's in our bloodstream from the meal that we ate, then our body starts tapping into liver glycogen. And when we eat excess of carbohydrate of what our body needs, what happens is that excess gets stored as liver glycogen. Some of it goes to our muscle, but mostly goes to our liver. And so when we fast, once we burn through all of that that's in our bloodstream, our body's going to start breaking down that excess that's in our liver, which is really important. We want to maintain a healthy storage of glycogen in our liver, but we don't want to have excess. And so by fasting, you're helping your body to be able to kind of reset those liver glycogen levels back to maybe what a more normal level would be for you. And then you're breaking the fast with a healthy meal the next day. I definitely recommend breaking that fast at breakfast time the next day, not breaking it at lunchtime, which people often do, because then that's going to completely dysregulate all of your hunger cues in the following days. Then you're going to be entering into another holiday meal type situation where you've skipped a meal and now you're probably likely going to overeat the next day. So you definitely want to make sure that if you are practicing this, that it's just in those evening hours and then overnight. And then we're breaking that fast with a healthy, nourishing meal, maybe something like the veggie omelet with the berries on the side for that breakfast the next day. So these are our 4 tips that we have for you guys for this holiday season. These can be utilized for both Thanksgiving as well as any of your December holidays or any other type of holiday events and parties that you have going on. We are going to include the link to our FullScript account. This is our professional grade supplement dispensary where you can find all of the supplements that we talked about in this episode at 15% off. They're all third-party tested for efficacy and for safety and to make sure that they're the highest quality and at the therapeutic dosages that are backed by research. So we're going to include that link there. If you want to pick up some of that N-acetylcysteine or those B vitamins, that zinc, maybe even some of those electrolytes or that berberine that we talked about in today's episode, you can find all of those inside of that FullScript catalog. And you can use any of these tips and strategies for the next couple of weeks. And then we hope to see you in January, where we'll be doing another 14-day reset, which would be a great opportunity to be able to help support resetting your body after the holiday season. We hope you guys have a great holiday season, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Nourish MD, Dr. Dietitian Dialogues. This podcast is intended for general educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Please consult with your healthcare provider before beginning any nutrition or supplement recommendations. Sign up for our mailing list so you'll never miss an episode of our wellness journey. See the podcast description for the link.